So much. A 911 call with life-changing consequences. Today, an undocumented immigrant who lived in Huntsville learned that the federal government will be returning him to Mexico in the next 2 weeks. He was taken into ICE custody after he was the one who called Huntsville police. WAFF 48's Chris Joseph has been following the story for us since May, and Chris talked to both police and the man's lawyer. Now, Chris, first off, tell us who we're talking about here.
Oh, Trent, this is Victoriano Cordoba Hernandez. Huntsville police arrested him for falsifying a police report in April. HPD says he lied about being robbed, and his defense team maintains his innocence, but the bottom line is a judge gave him a voluntary departure to Mexico, and his example could be pushing some members of his community away from those who protect and serve. Victoriano Hernandez will be heading to Mexico in the next 2 weeks, but his presence in Huntsville could be felt for a while. Jennifer Romero sold tamales for his legal defense in May and said this.
Plenty of people in the community that prefer not to call the police and just go through their problems however they can, or suffer the problems, I should say, because they're scared. They're scared that they end up in jail and they end up leaving the country.
That fear came true for Hernandez, and his defense attorney, Michael T. Walt, says he sees it all the time.
They're afraid that there'll be a language barrier, and they could ultimately get into trouble because they call the police for whatever legitimate reason they may have had.
T. Walt says HPD and city prosecution did handle his client's case responsibly after the arrest, and Hernandez is not facing any charges from that night, but his fate was already sealed with ICE.
Everybody has to know that we don't facilitate any of these ICE detainers on any of these individuals. We're going to investigate every call to its fullest, and if that means arresting somebody for a misdemeanor, that's what they'll go to jail for.
Lieutenant Michael Johnson says the department works to put bilingual officers where they can bridge the language gap.
We have hundreds of calls a month in these communities where, especially in the Hispanic community, and we have officers that speak Spanish, deal with situations where there is no arrest.
T. Walt says Hernandez bears no ill will to Huntsville police and has a message for those faced with a similar choice.
If you are truly the victim of something, to go ahead and call law enforcement.
Do what you need to do.
Do what you need to do. Get the protection. The police are there to serve and protect all people, regardless of where they came from. This is just a bad circumstances of events that ultimately led to him being removed from the country.
Now, Hernandez's legal team says that because he is not facing any charges related to his arrest, he's not barred from legally returning to the U.S. However, with the current climate, he may remain in Mexico for the time being.